Hello and welcome to All My Nerves, the podcast all about science and pop culture. So, a quick little note, this episode was actually recorded at the end of July, and naturally it is now coming out now that it's the end of October. So, just a quick little disclaimer, some of the things discussed in this episode were big topics in the news and on social media back in summer, however, they may sound like old news now. And not only is this episode premiering on October 30th, which means that tomorrow is Halloween, but the November general election is also right around the corner. This is your reminder that Election Day is Tuesday, November 4th. I want to encourage everyone to make a plan to get out to the polls and exercise your right to vote, because whether it's your first time voting or your 50th, your voice matters. This November, there are hundreds of state and local elections happening across the country. In Virginia and New Jersey, voters will be electing new governors. And across the United States, communities will be choosing everything from school board members to state legislators. Remember, local elections are often where your vote can make the biggest impact on your everyday life. If you're planning to vote absentee, aren't sure if you're registered, or if you need help finding your polling place, then I highly encourage you to check out vote.org. It's a free and easy resource to use and has plenty of information about how to vote in your state. And if you want to learn more about what's on your ballot, check out Ballotpedia or call your local election office. You can find their contact information by searching your county or town's name along with Office of Elections. So mark your calendars for November 4th. Make your plan and make your voice heard, because every vote matters in a democracy. For today's episode, I'm very excited to introduce the first ever guest on the All My Nerves podcast, Miss Lily Barna. Lily holds a Bachelor's of Arts in Biology from Colgate University and is currently pursuing a PhD in Science and Health Communication at Northwestern University. Lily is definitely one of the best and brightest early career researchers in the field of science communication. She has spoken at several events, including at the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland. I'm also just a little bit biased because she's also a really good friend of mine. So, without further ado, Lily, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
All right, so I kind of gave a very, very short description of your CV, but I wanted you to go over a little bit more in depth because your introduction to science is very, very different from mine and a lot of people I know. So I would love it if you could go through your story real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. I started high school thinking that I wanted to be a journalist and specifically a fashion journalist, which was a very different path that I was on. And I took my introductory bio classes and I really enjoyed it. And then when I got to AP Bio, my junior year of high school, I learned about genetics in a new way that I hadn't heard of before. I am an Ashkenazi Jewish person, and so Tay-Sachs disease was something I was always familiar with sort of peripherally. But when I heard about the mechanisms that were behind it and just how sort of devastating it is, even on a cellular level, I knew that that was something I wanted to explore further. So that's what got me into biology broadly and then genetics more specifically. And then when I got to Colgate, I sort of just wanted to follow the path that was most interesting in that moment. I am not a math girl. I am not a chem girl. I sit firmly in the biology and the genetic spheres. And so I was able to just kind of follow those passions through Colgate, those 4 years. And when we got to this point in time, I knew as I was graduating, I'd spent my time with the microscopes, I'd spent my time at the bench, and my favorite part of the entire process was telling my friends about it, sometimes complaining, sometimes explaining. And that is what led me to start looking into and researching science communication.
Lovely, love it. So you kind of talked about how you got into the communications aspect, and you talked about a little bit how you wanted to do journalism. So what kind of made you shy away from science journalism, science policy, or even science education? What made you firmly choose health communication?
Yeah, that's a really great question. From a sort of medium perspective, I love to yap, I love to talk, and I also think, yeah, and I think there's a lot of amazing and sort of under-researched ways to communicate information effectively, through conversations. I think there's so many incredible writers out there And writing has never been my strongest suit, although I love it and I want to continue growing and pursuing. But I think something in that interpersonal sort of either narrative-based or just person-to-person communication was really motivating for me. So that's where I got in the comm sphere of things. In terms of health communication specifically, on a personal note, I have an autoimmune disorder that was quite the journey to get diagnosed. And I was very thankful that I was able to go to my doctor's office and understand like the tests he was prescribing, what these things meant, what these kind of complex medical lingo terms were saying. And I realized that a lot of people don't have that base understanding. They didn't get their degrees in biology, they didn't look into genetics. And so I realized there's so much fear associated with not knowing. There was a lot of fear that I had before I had a diagnosis and before I understood what was happening. And I think that really motivated me to mitigate that fear as much as possible through communication. And I think genetics is ever growing. And so I sort of honed in on genetics both because I enjoy it as a field and because I think it's going to become even more prominent in people's personal health care.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with like the light of precision medicine being talked about in the news and by like every major organization.
Everyone.
Especially every private company. Because it's like the next step in medicine is making things like to the individual using genetics, using those kinds of testing. But yeah, thank you very much for sharing that. But you are very soon pursuing a PhD in communications. So what inspired you to want to do a PhD? Because that's not an easy task. That is a very long, grueling 5 years. And also specifically in communications instead of like biology, like how you started in undergrad.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely went back through, I think, a similar, almost circular journey of figuring out the PhD versus a master's versus going into the job sphere immediately. And I think that I went through sort of what it means to get a PhD, the idea of contributing to a body of knowledge, but also generating new knowledge and also learning all of the things that we still need to learn. And I think as much as I still want to continue to grow my technical skills, my writing, just the ability to read papers is something we're always working on. I really wanted to contribute to something new and something novel and sort of steer the path of learning into the future directions it's going to go into. I think communications, health communication specifically, is very up and coming. It's changed drastically since the COVID-19 pandemic. There's a lot more emphasis on misinformation research and vaccine hesitancy and a lot of things that were present before but are a lot more amplified now. And so I felt like it was a good time to, instead of just dipping my toes in the water, dive straight in so that 5 years down the line, which is such a scary long amount of time, 2030, I know, it's like a terrifying number. Oh my God, that's so scary. And like, it just feels so far away, but I know it's going to come so quickly. And I want to be able to be an expert in a field that's just becoming more and more center stage and more mainstream. And so I think that's sort of what was gearing me into the PhD. And then I also am thankful that I found a program that I really connected with. I connected with the faculty, with the current students, and specifically working in sort of this communication of risk and uncertainty in genetics is something that I'm very excited to pursue.
I agree. What in the last couple of years, especially going from like a wet lab setting to a dry lab setting, what have you learned about yourself and also about like the way you like to talk and communicate certain ideas or certain concepts to people over the past couple of years?
Absolutely. The first thing I learned, some people love the monotony and repetitive nature of wet lab work. And after maybe my like 30th Western blot, I was like, I cannot do this again. I liked culturing my cells because that felt low stakes and like I wasn't wasting, money every time that something went awry. And so I think I learned that I want.
But science is also learning.
Science is learning.
It's good.
It's part of the process. I did, out of my like 30 plus Western blots, get like 4 usable ones. So
it happens.
Success. Yeah, in like a whole year.
You gotta start.
Exactly. And so I think I learned that whatever career I want, even if I'm in like the field of genetics, it sounds like one sort of umbrella. There is so much going on within the umbrella that I think I will never feel sort of like I'm doing the same thing day in and day out. So I think that was one thing that I learned. Another thing that I picked up on was that I really enjoy the look on somebody's face when they understand something, or the feeling that they are seeing something in a new way, and being able to facilitate that feeling. I'm really excited for. At this moment in time, I'm not planning to go into teaching. I'm going to explore it. I will be teaching, yeah.
Teaching is like fun, but also
Academia is just like not a really inviting space necessarily at this moment. There's a huge backlog of people from COVID and now all the current hiring freezes. But I do want to be teaching, if informally or at some point throughout my career. And I lost track of the second half of the question, but I think maybe I covered some of it.
Oh yeah, it's just anything that has like shaped you and how you.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much. I've learned a lot about speaking to different audiences and about getting confidence to speak in spaces that I maybe didn't have previously. So I was thinking back, really tough. And I used to be way more nervous. I used to say I would rather speak to a room of like 1,000 strangers than like a classroom full of people I knew, because their opinions matter so much more to me and they know me. And I took,
and also tell you their thoughts.
Exactly.
It's even scarier.
It's so scary. And I took like public speaking class my freshman year of high school, and I was so nervous. And when I get nervous, my hands shake. And I would just, it was such a point of like shame almost. I was so afraid to public speak. And so I made it a point to practice. That's how we get better at these things. And people in this community here have really pushed me to practice and be in those uncomfortable spaces. And now I've given a scientific talk to over 1,000 people, which I never.
All of whom were scientists.
Yeah, it's so
at
true.
the top of their fields. I'm going to brag for Lily right now because I don't know how you got up on a stage and spoke in front of so many very accomplished people at the ripe age of 23.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was crazy. And I still can't believe, like, I see photos from it and it's just like, whoa. Yeah, it's like a lot of, yeah. And so once I started feeling more confident in those spaces and also feeling okay making mistakes through the practice, so long as making mistakes with the people who knew me, so long as it worked out in the end, I think that changed the way I communicate for sure. And I learned some theory and some other stuff that I will use as I communicate in the future.
It's always helpful to like have in the back pocket when you are obviously going into like an unknown space, especially.
Absolutely.
But man, took some big strides from what I've seen. Just talking to over 1,000 people, a room full of, again, accomplished scientists, who would probably not even have our time of day most of the time anyways. And also talk competitions coming.
Yeah. Don't remember who I was talking to, somebody who doesn't work with us, and met somebody who does work with us and said, oh, by chance, you know Lily? And this guy was like, yeah, absolutely. She was a great speaker. I heard her give a talk. And that was the first time that ever happened to me. And that was so crazy. I was like, oh my God, you know who I am, and you know from my speaking. And so I really like that feeling, and I would like that to happen again.
Okay, so big pivot in questions, but I usually try to make the slight distinction that science is in fact political, but political doesn't mean it has to be partisan or bipartisan. So just because science is either funded by the government, which most science is, a lot of science is around the globe, but also in the United States, does not mean A, it's bad, or B, it fits an agenda.
Yeah.
So because of the times we're living in, especially with all the information overload, and it's getting a lot harder to pick out what's reality versus what's not, what's AI, what's fabrication, whatever. What do you see as some of the most urgent priorities in science communication in the field? I know it's like a really big question.
Absolutely.
But it's becoming more important because it's easier and easier to fake things, and I think our generation is good at spotting that sometimes, but sometimes it slips under the radar. And you know what? I hate to say it, older generations sometimes aren't as good. Sometimes. So it's important to be vigilant.
100%. Two things sort of come to mind. It's like a two-prong approach that I try to keep in mind. The first is, and I think kind of as a byproduct of the COVID-19 pandemic, we've seen a lot of trust issues in regards to our scientific institutions. That does also tend to lie on partisan lines. And we see that in the research that we're doing. those lines are quite pervasive when it comes to what science you believe and what science you trust. One thing that I am really passionate about is reinstating trust and educating people on the scientific method.
Yeah.
Because most people, after you finish your introductory science courses, if you don't go on, you don't really think too heavy about hypothesis, and then we're testing it, and then, sometimes we prove it, sometimes we don't. You're not really proving anything ever. Everything's made to disprove what came before it. So inherently, there's quite a lot of change in science, and I think that makes people quite uncomfortable.
Yeah.
They like when the news comes out with a headline and says, this food will cure Alzheimer's, this food has been shown to help you live longer. And so I think one thing is focusing really hard on the core messaging that the people who work for the government, no matter which way you vote, adhere to the scientific method. And I think that a lot of people forget that, and they try to attribute sort of these moral or partisan lines to the science that's going on. I think that's one thing. Secondly, I do think a lot of people sort of think in this deficit model of science communication, where they think if we just told people the right answers, they would do the right thing, they would believe us and understand us, and the problem is they don't know enough. We know more and more that's not the case. There is a subjective, objective knowledge gap sometimes where people may feel really confident in something and then can't back it up. But I think more and more often, it is less that people don't know something. It's more that they are choosing not to know something, or they're choosing to believe they're experts. I say in quotation marks. And so I think it's important that we pivot as a field to account for that, to reach people with empathy, to have, I think of Dr. Mike, who I love so dearly, to reach people. I know. Put it all together.
Brief context.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone now knows who Jubilee is if you didn't before.
Exactly.
Especially because of their recent videos, but Dr. Mike did a video, I want to say in May or April.
Yeah.
About talking to 20 anti-vaxxers for like 2 hours. Just ridiculously long amount of time. And of course that video made waves on the internet, and I found out that you did that.
Yeah.
I've been watching this video since I was a sophomore in high school, because it's like health communication,
Yeah.
It's medical
No.
communication, and I always find that really interesting.
Absolutely.
But
that's what I want to do.
It's just silly, stupid, like YouTube education.
Yeah.
And that is the stuff like I grew up on.
No, and I came and I was so excited, and I definitely have seen his face and seen his things before.
Yeah.
But like I didn't put it all together.
Right.
And I need to get more into YouTube.
Different kind of health comms.
It's true. It's very true. But yeah, I really applaud his ability to hear people talk about, we know the names of some scientists who like to do things their own way, not the scientific way, like to publish in journals that they fund and they create. And the whole back process of trying to get a paper published is grueling and time consuming.
So much work.
And
it should be work.
Exactly, but it is like so insane sometimes. The hoops you jump through just to make sure that you are backing up everything you say with previous literature, with data, with tables. You have to go through that. And so some people, not to get on tangent, some people bypass that.
Some people still slip through the cracks in very famous journals who are usually known for being very good about peer review.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I'm researching for a paper, I believe it's the Lancet, well, correct me if I'm wrong, who published the initial paper about vaccines and autism. And they retracted it.
Right, yeah.
And then they published a second paper by the same author that they later had to retract. And so the process is not linear, I should say, or unidirectional. But yeah, I think we need to account for dealing with those who are very firm in their beliefs and firm in what they know and what they think they know. Because I think that's a much larger problem than the people who don't know and are open to learning.
Yeah, I agree. I think the messaging of science is a little bit messed up right now.
Yeah.
It's kind of, science is supposed to find things out always, and it's like a linear line. Like we try to run experiments and study things, and then we will yield a result that is helpful.
Yeah.
And that can be applied immediately. It's just not how science works at all. And that's never how it's worked, unfortunately. Science is slow,
Very
so slow. And frequently we have to admit and say we don't know.
Yeah.
As scientists, we don't want to say that. Because
it's true.
Kind of takes your ego down. But it's so important to say we don't know something and to market the field. as such. Like, we don't know things, we're trying to find out.
Absolutely.
We're trying to do research and learn more. But we have to start from a place of we just don't know.
You make something, you do an experiment, it works one way, you do it again, it doesn't work. Replicability is a huge thing in our field, and that's one thing happening right now that I didn't learn about until I was in the field, which is the replicability crisis. If you cannot recreate an experiment and get the same results, do we know what was really happening in the experiment? And so I think
like in every branch of science.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Science, hard science,
all over.
everything.
And so
like,
no, but still. And yeah, I just think then we get to things like vaccines, not to bring it back around town again, which we have so much research on. Yeah. Vaccines are one of the semi-core tenets that we have been able to prove time and time again are working. And
it's also one of those things where it's not like we have one kind of vaccine.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like a singular drug.
Absolutely.
It's not like Advil, where it's like there's one,
there's the compound
ingredient, and there's the rest of the pill, and then like that is what the medication is. Like, we have so many different kinds of vaccines. Yeah. We have the attenuated virus vaccines, we have the MMR vaccines, which obviously or sorry, mRNA.
Yeah.
MMR, that is a
No, but exactly, yeah.
But the mRNA vaccines, like there are multiple types that use different science to deliver something to make your body become immune against the disease.
Exactly.
And it kind of blows my mind that people are like, no, they're all bad.
Yeah. And they're like, this mRNA thing is so new. And it's like, no, it's not. Just because you're used to like an attenuated virus vaccine doesn't mean, so I think that's something we're going to have to work on going forward as a field.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. So we've talked about a couple bad examples.
Yeah.
What are some other good examples of good science communication in New Zealand? Absolutely.
I think, first off, I love genetic counselors. I originally, for about a month and a half, wanted to be a genetic counselor.
I wish I could say everything, but I respect the thing.
And my friends joke who are in programs now that I saw them apply, and that's why I didn't want to. That's not why. I didn't want to be in a clinical sphere.
And that's totally fair.
Yeah, exactly. But I think genetic counselors are one example of already an overworked, undervalued group of people, but one example of something we've implemented that is hugely helping in a science communication sphere. They are directly a bridge between the genetic tests that maybe it's either, it's typically oncology, prenatal, or pediatric. So maybe parents are nervous, soon-to-be parents are nervous, family members are nervous, and they're the direct bridge to disseminating that information in a clear and actionable way. And so I think that framework is really strong. It's very niche right now. I would love to see those things on a broader scale. But I think genetic testing, in terms of, we hear about the BRCA family of genes. I know with efforts to increase Tay-Sachs genetic testing, we are making strides in illustrating the importance of getting these tests, and there are efforts to increase return of results so that when you contribute to a research study, you are not just giving your genetics out there and never hearing back again. You're actually benefiting from the test that we're doing. So I think that's really big. I think, we talk about Colossal. I think Colossal has pros and cons in their science communication outreach sort of deal. They love to be sensational. It gets people's attention. I think they're doing sensational things in the definition of the word.
It's weird because they're doing good science.
Yes.
Technically speaking, like, it's not bad. It's just marketed in the weirdest
way. And they're doing groundbreaking work in a lot of different ways, but also like a huge percentage of what they do is current species conservation, as opposed to bringing species back.
Yeah.
And I would love to see more posts. I think their Instagram is hilarious in the way they market and put everything. I would love to see more posts about current conservation efforts, so that when people click to hear about the new dire wolves, they're also sort of absorbing some of that information. But I do think they're doing really amazing work. And I know I have a lot of family members who are not in the STEM sphere at all. And they're coming to me and they're like, are you seeing this? And I'm so thankful. I got to email with Beth Shapiro. Shout out Beth Shapiro. Because
she was their comms.
Yes, or she's their chief science officer.
Course, yes.
No, please. And I got to hear her speak about the American bison, bison. And I was obsessed with her and the mission. Anyways, that's some examples of, I think, things that we're doing well and things that are exciting in the field. And I think that we can learn a lot from how people are able to speak about it, how genetic counselors prepare to give results, and how companies like Colossal are posting and interacting with the public with it.
No, I totally agree. I think also like it helps when like people can rally behind like a certain project. Like,
Yeah.
I guess kind of what Colossal's doing now, but that is a private company, so it's a little different. But like when I think of like when there's a lot of passion for science, or like after a certain event, like the Human Genome Project was like a really big deal. Neither one of us were really allowed to start,
Yeah.
but you know, like for the most part, there were a lot of people who thought this was a very cool thing to come out of, especially like the fact that it was partially private and government funded. And even things like, I mean, NASA, I feel like I always want to throw them, even though it's not biomedical science at all, like that is a big talking point for people who love space.
Yeah.
People think it's really cool. There's a lot of people who don't like space, but I think the people who love space
Right.
can talk louder than the people who don't. And there's a lot of passion around a lot of what they were looking to accomplish. Again, 80 years ago, or no, 60 years ago.
I know.
60 years ago, I cannot do math, which is obviously a very long time ago,
But it's still happening. I mean, we had the opportunity to meet an astronaut, Dr. Kate Rubins, obsessed with her. I know I need to get that picture. No, it's somewhere. I know it's like in somebody's phone.
Right.
And she is doing experiments. She was in space doing experiments. She's still doing experiments. And I was, first of all, in awe. I was just talking about this actually when we were at an event last week. Meeting somebody who's been in the stars and then has come back to the ground is objectively insane.
Yeah.
Insane that the human body went through that. And then to meet somebody who's doing these super cool experiments, and I'm not going to go into detail on them because I'm not an expert and I need to learn more. You might know sort of what she does. Yeah.
Huh? What?
It's incredible.
Shows, she's a microbiologist who became an astronaut later.
Yes.
And has done 2, can I call them space tours?
Yeah, absolutely.
Space missions, I guess.
Yeah.
Spent over a year and a bit, or over a year and a half in space. And was the first person to ever definitely run a PCR in space.
Yeah, I think so.
I believe sequence the genome.
I think so.
I will.
Yeah.
Because I probably got some of those mixed up a little bit because we met a few months ago, but very cool. Also, great speaker too.
Right, and such a prime example of the intersection between space and, in this case, microbiology, and these things overlap so much.
Fields of science and honestly arts as well.
Mm-hmm.
Everything, it's connected. Like,
always.
We like to say it's chunked out and compartmentalized, but it's just not. All fields can have some overlap.
Absolutely.
And that's a good thing because we learn from each other. It's always really important.
I mean, you were talking about the human genome. I don't know where we were when we saw, we've seen all of the human genome printed on pieces of paper, which is, in a way, art, but it also showcases just how many genes we have going on, just so many bases. Yeah. And I think that's a fabulous visual representation to help convey the idea of what's going on inside of us. Which is insane that it's inside of us.
Yeah, 6 feet of DNA in every single one of our cells.
Crazy.
We have trillions of cells in our body. Oh, more than that, because we have trillions of neurons in our brain.
Yeah, it's true. I don't even know how many.
I'm not even gonna. I would have to say in the next one.
Exactly.
Not too many, but it's a lot. But what are you most excited next, especially as you are moving on, starting your PhD? What are some things you look forward to, both in the field and also personally?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I know I'm so sad. I'm in my very emotional chapter of leaving this space. No, I know. I honestly have been stuffing those feelings away. I think I'm really excited to be around because where we work, there's a lot of people researching a lot of different things. And I love seeing how everything comes together. I'm excited to be in a dedicated space that's really honing in on these aspects of science communication. I'm excited. This is kind of not embarrassing, but it's crazy. I've actually never taken a comms class. So
you do that in college.
Exactly. So I'm excited to take a comms class. There are some really incredible professors. And within my program, I'm doing health comm, but there's also political communication, comp sci communication. So I'm really excited to learn about those different fields. I'm excited to meet the people who are writing all of these papers that I'm reading about all of these crazy things. And then I think in the broader scheme, I met somebody who was a little bit freaking out about the PhD journey and thinking about what's going to happen in 5 years, what are we going to do? And I said something to him that I still tell myself all the time, which is instead of thinking that long-term ahead, think about what you want to do today and what you want to do tomorrow. I have 5 years of getting to do something that I love. I also love being a student. Clearly, I've always loved school. Hated being sick and missing any school.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I know. I think we're very similar in that way.
Yeah.
And so I'm really excited to just be able to do that as my main focus. And then, I'll figure out, maybe I'll really love teaching. Right now, I'm really passionate about the thought of either, I've thought about heading into government work. It's a lot going on there right now. But there's nonprofit work, there's private work, there's all of these different spaces where people need to talk about research, need to communicate it to the public, and need to help make people less afraid of all of the unknowns. So I'm excited to explore all of that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I agree. I'm gonna clip in one more question that I came up later
Yeah.
to ask, but see if I can phrase it properly now. So we talked a little bit about like also how well theory of communication plays into science and science communication as a whole. What is your favorite theory within communication
Absolutely.
that you've learned about, talked about, written about?
Absolutely. And you know it. It is my favorite fuzzy trace theory. Valerie Reyna, I cannot wait to hopefully meet you one day. I love fuzzy trace theory, and first I will explain what it is. Essentially, when you're having a conversation with someone, I like to say, oh my God, the dog got out of the house today. It was running around. It ate 12 of my chocolate chip cookies. Now I have to take it to the vet, and it ripped up all of my purple sweaters. Thankfully, it left the green alone. And as you're sort of telling the story, you might be picking up on how many cookies it ate, what kind of cookies it ate, or you might be picking up on just how bad the dog was today. And so that's like a very surface level, and I could be explaining it horribly, but that's how I like to intro fuzzy trace theory, because whenever you give communication, be it oral, be it written, there are these verbatim messages, the facts, the figures, the whens, the wheres. And then there's the gist level messaging, or the whys, the take-home messages from any piece of information. Stories, typically we know they have morals. That's kind of like a gist underlying. And so I love when we talk about different forms of communication, how we can help increase that strong gist message. So if we're giving you medical information, maybe you don't remember exactly how many genes are affected by this, but you can remember that you need to seek out genetic counseling or a genetic test. This theory I know has been used in the legal sphere when we talk about witness testimony, false memory. How do we encourage people to remember either the facts and the figures or what's underneath? And it's
bottom line of like,
exactly
here's what you need to know.
And it's been used a little bit in some experiments with cancer messaging and infographics. I would really love to see it go further into the genetic sphere. I would love to see it used with vaccines. I would love to see it used with autism. See if we can generate those really core important messages of trust in the scientific theory, trust in science as a whole. I think it could be incredibly beneficial.
Obviously, science communication is kind of the end goal for science. It's how we actually discuss science both with the public, with the media and the news, and it's more how science is basically translated. How does science get there? Because obviously, we can't just go from written grant proposal to we're talking about it on the news or talking about it on like social media or whatever. So how does the process from science idea in the lab to actually talking about it to people?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I literally just got a headline that popped up on my watch that was like, scientists can't explain the 8.8 earthquake that we had. And I think that the way that scientists interact with mass media has irrevocably changed the way people interpret science. Right now, a standard kind of path would be experiments are happening, something is found, a scientist will talk directly to a journalist, or a scientific institution will talk directly to a journalist. The journalist will publish the key takeaway, whatever that may be, without necessarily always giving the robustness of what the actual implications might be. And so sometimes it's like, that's how we get, this food will, help you live longer. And it's like, well, the study did show that maybe the mice who were eating this did live longer, but it's one study where 14 others maybe showed the opposite.
And also, like, what is live long?
Exactly.
What is that, like, percent difference? Is it, like, a few days? Is it a few months? Is it years?
Exactly.
It's hard to translate that also, especially from an animal to us.
And it's like journalists, most people reading the news probably don't know all of the niche words that we use. You know, what is a Cohen's d? What is a p-value signifying? And so oftentimes things get lost in translation when they go down that path. Science communicators, sometimes they start on the journalist side, sometimes they start on the scientist side, sometimes they start somewhere else altogether and find their passion for it. But having somebody who can both understand the science that's going on and speak about it with sort of lay people terms is a really crucial step in that process. Journalist jobs are to have people read their work and they want to spread the news. Sometimes things can become sensationalized that really need a little bit more context. So I think, and you know, when you say scientists said this and now they say this, it can also undermine some of that faith, like in that trust that we talked about in the scientific method. So I just think that's something important to keep in mind. And in the future of science communication, we will be directly bridged between research and mass media.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think science also like has like every field has a problem with marketing itself, but science is weird because it just is consistently changing.
Yes.
So it's hard to like consistently market something to people when it's always changing. Like you can't use the same information a lot of the time. You also can't even talk about it in the same way because it's just ever evolving. Versus like retail, like companies, obviously their marketing tactics will change over time, duh, as we know. But like their marketing firms, they always have the same objective, and it's to get people to buy stock and to get customers. So their objectives are always the same. They're just finding new creative ways to market their things. But like our problem is on the back end, like our stuff is always changing. Like our product is essentially is always changing. Yeah. And trying to communicate that effectively is difficult. It's not easy.
The only constant is the methods that we use and things like peer review, which is so important and integral, and some people are choosing to pass over. So I think that's the only sort of take-home message that doesn't change.
Well, thank you, Lily, so much for coming on today. We are at the end of our chat for the moment, but I personally like to end off with what I'm reading and what I'm watching right now, just because it's a little bit more lighthearted and fun. And also, you know, it's a good place to get wrecked sometimes, and also I love to hear other people do it, so that's why I do it too. But I was curious, especially because I know you are probably one of the most avid readers I've ever met. What are you reading right now? And what are you also watching or doing also right now that you want to plug?
Absolutely. First off, thank you so much for having me. Genuinely so fun and just a really cool experience to get to talk about all of these things. Start with watching. Right now, I'm watching Girls for the first time through, which is truly transformative. Lena Dunham really did something. And I'm also watching Lucifer for the first time, which is just really good, like TV to have on while I'm packing, because I like it and it's entertaining.
You don't have to like really watch it.
Exactly.
I love things like that.
And then reading right now, I am attempting to finish Onyx Storm before I move, which probably won't happen, but I've been going through the whole Fourth Wing Empyrean journey. Yes. And then I am also reading a book that actually has not come out yet called We Fell Apart, which is the third book in the We Were Liars series that just became the TV show on Amazon Prime. Starring Joseph Zeta, future young Haymitch. Oh, of course. If you take one thing away from this podcast, it's to read Sunrise on the Reaping.
Something we would not shut up about in March of 2025.
Absolutely. Still my favorite read of the year so far. And yeah, what are you reading and watching right now, Olivia?
Reading? Well, we both went to a talk recently in DC about like the chaos that was the campaign for election cycle. Chaos on both sides, let me just say that. It was a very different year for media and for campaigning. And I think it's definitely going to be changing the future of how people campaign. Again, both sides, like I'm just blanket statement, no criticisms or additional comments or opinions there. But it was definitely interesting to hear about. And I'm reading the book that was plugged by the journalists who were talking about it. So it's like, I think it's just called 2024. And it's like the year of something in election cycle. I can't remember what it was. I'll put it in the multiple. But I'm reading that one right now. It's good. I'm listening to it and reading it, and I can't get past the narrator. It's just
So
it's
real.
funny because like they write like from both of the candidates' perspectives, and it's like the narrator sounds nothing like Trump, Biden, or later Harris,
Awesome.
and it's very like off-putting to me because I like the narrators when I have audiobooks to like at least kind of sound like how I think the character would sound like, but that's just like a personal preference. I've also finished Everything's Tuberculosis by John Green, so I will be talking about that one later because I really love that book and I will continue to plug that book. Came out the same day as Summer House in the Reaping though.
It's true.
And that's kind of it for books. Unfortunately, I've been in a slight reading slump.
I hear you.
A little busy, but busy time. But for TV shows, I was watching reruns of ER because I wanted to watch The Pit. Not that that's like a precursor to watch The Pit, but I wanted some more context because obviously it stars the same people, very different context, completely different show, obviously. But I was like, might as well watch. I like watching any kind of drama from the 90s and 2000s. I just like the X-Files,
Yeah.
Bones, and what else was I recently watching? I can't remember. That's okay. But like shows like that, like they're not quite. I guess Bones is a procedural, but like actually X-Files is too. But they're not the current shows. Not that they're bad,
Mhm.
but it just mixes things up for a while. So yeah, that's what I've been watching. But is there anything else you would like to plug? Because you talked about how you have a book that's not come out yet. How
true.
are you reading this?
So true. I'm so thankful to be an ARC reader, advanced reader copy reader. That's quite redundant. And I talk about all of the books I'm reading, and I also bedazzle them,
Yes.
which is a hobby that I picked up that has been so fulfilling. I recommend everybody get some rhinestones, get a little glue. It will change your life. I talk about all of that on my book Instagram, or Bookstagram for those in the community. Which is Lily Loves a Library, Lily. I'm a 1L Lily. Well, I know growing up, it's like you meet every variation of Lily, which I love them all.
Right.
I love all Lilies. But yeah, Lily Loves a Library. We have a lot of fun things happening there. And so, yeah, sometimes science related when I read a science related book, and sometimes I just like to escape with like the dragons or the weird books. I love a weird book. So all of that is there and more. And thank you again, Olivia. This has been so wonderful.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. I hope you enjoyed the first ever interview on the All My Nerves podcast as much as I did. As always, I will be linking any articles or any sources related to the topics discussed in this interview into the notes section down below. If you have any comments or questions about this episode, feel free to reach out on the All My Nerves podcast Instagram, @AllMyNervesPod. Hope everyone has a wonderful weekend, and don't forget to vote on November 4th. And check back soon for another episode of All My Nerves.